On a historic day in American politics. Today really was a really big day. This is Richard Toronto. Do not be distracted by his last name. He is not a mayor. He is not Canadian. He has nothing to do with crack cocaine. He has nothing to do with Canadian football, nothing to do with anything that looks anything like this. Rather, Richard Toronto is a lawyer who is focused on intellectual property issues. He has had a very successful, very highfalutin legal career. And Mr. Toronto was nominated for a prestigious federal judgeship a couple of years ago, November 2011. He was nominated and then nothing. Nothing happened. Republicans in the Senate would not allow there to be a vote on his nomination. And beyond that, they insisted that there would have to be a supermajority vote to confirm him as a judge. So not just a majority of the Senate could vote for this guy, it would have to be a supermajority, as if he were a treaty or a constitutional amendment or something. And so Richard Toronto, no relation, waited month after 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 month. And then finally, this spring, 17 months after he was first nominated, after he had been waiting almost a year and a half, they finally decided to put Richard Toronto's nomination up for a vote in the United States Senate. And you want to know what the vote was? The vote was 91-0. 0 votes against him. No Republicans had any problem with him whatsoever. So what was all that about that? This is what it is like now under President Barack Obama. That has never been true before in American history. There have only been judicial and executive branch filibusters on nominees since basically the 60s. But using them to make people wait years after they are nominated for something, before their nomination actually gets voted on, this is a new thing. This is a new thing. The Republicans in the Senate saved this one up for this particular president. On Tuesday of this week, Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia wrote this ruling, which allowed Texas basically to keep shutting down abortion clinics in the state. The new Texas anti-abortion law that has already shut down a third of the clinics in that state, it's sort of on the bubble legally, and the Supreme Court had to decide whether to put a hold on the law while it is being challenged or whether they would let the law go ahead. And Justice Scalia wrote this ruling this week saying, yeah, let the law go ahead. Shut all those clinics down in the meantime. The 4 justices who disagreed with him were these guys: Stephen Breyer, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan. They were on the losing side of that argument about Texas. The other justices who sided with Justice Scalia were Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito. And even though they did not sign the ruling, we know mathematically, because the Scalia side won, that the other 2 justices on the court, Justice Roberts and Justice Kennedy, also sided with Scalia on this ruling. And so this was the 2 sides in this really important Texas abortion ruling this week. But now, look at this breakdown. The side voting to keep the clinics open in Texas, those judges were appointed by President Obama, President Clinton, President Clinton. The side that voted to shut down the clinics, those justices were appointed by George W. Bush, George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, Ronald Reagan, Ronald Reagan. Notice a trend? Notice any pattern here? Presidents appoint judges. This is one of the fundamental things that presidents do. If you boil presidents down, this is one of the last things left in the pot, all gelatinous down there. It is one of the most fundamental and consequential things that American presidents do. It is part and parcel of the job. It always has been. Like it or lump it, if you elect a president, that president will choose judicial nominees to fill vacant seats on federal courts. That's the deal in electing a president. And in the past, we've had plenty of fights over how bad a president's judgment can be in who he picks for the bench, or how radically ambitious he can be in terms of the ideology of his nominees. And there's been plenty of fights in the past about the quality of judges chosen by various presidents. So, like, Ruth Bader Ginsburg did a lot of work for the ACLU. Is that going to be okay with everybody when they vote on her? Or Caitlin Halligan, a more recent nominee. She was involved in litigation around gun manufacturers. Clarence Thomas had the sexual harassment allegations, famously. Harriet Miers apparently revealed under questioning that she did not know what the 4th Amendment did. Or the 5th Amendment. Also, yeah, don't keep asking. There have been fights in the past about people who were picked to be judges, about their qualifications, their temperament, whether they were a good person for that job. What's new is this. There is no objection to this guy. Republicans don't think there's anything wrong with this guy. No Republican cast a vote against him. But you still got to sit out and wait for 17 months anyway, because we're going to block the vote on you, filibuster your nomination, and make everybody take extraordinary measures to let you get anywhere near the bench, even though we have no problem with you as a nominee. That is new. And that is not a fight over Mr. Toronto. That is not a fight about anybody specific who the president is picking. That is a fight about whether or not this president, like all other presidents who went before him, is allowed to put people on the federal bench. This is a fight about President Obama. It's not that they dislike the nominees. They don't think that a president named Barack Obama should be allowed his nominees for the federal bench. Liberals tend to like FDR, right? The New Deal. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. I welcome their hatred. Liberals love this guy. You know, I'm a liberal. I love the guy. One terrible thing that FDR did was he did try to pack the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court kept striking down his New Deal era legislation, saying it was unconstitutional. FDR's proposed fix for that was that he would add a whole bunch of new judges to the court. Not that he would pick new nominees for the court, but he would actually make the court larger. He'd leave the existing judges where they were, but he'd add half a dozen new judges to the court all at once, all of whom he would appoint, and voila, a new majority. FDR kind of thought about trying to do that, and he did not get away with it. And no matter what else you think about him as a president and as a historical figure, it really is an abiding scandal of his presidency that he even batted that idea around. In addition to their unprecedented systematic blockade of judges, this week Republicans tried to pull an FDR on one of the nation's most important federal courts. Republicans generally do not want President Obama appointing judges to federal courts anywhere in the country. But they really, really don't want President Obama appointing judges to what's considered to be the second most powerful court in the nation under the Supreme Court. It's the appeals court that sits in Washington, D.C. And as the court in D.C., it deals with a lot of questions about the constitutionality of various federal regulations and actions by the federal government. This is the court where John Roberts, for example, was a judge before he went to the Supreme Court in 2005. His seat there on that court has been vacant ever since he went to the Supreme Court. And two of the other seats on that court are vacant as well. There are 3 vacancies on that really important court. And the Republicans do not want to allow President Obama to put any nominees on that court to fill those vacancies. And so they have tried to do what FDR tried to do, kind of. They tried to change the number of seats on the court so that they could get their, or preserve their, desired ideological mix. Between the number of seats on the court that are filled right now and retired justices who also do work on cases when the caseload there is heavy, right now on that court there's a strong and actually quite aggressive conservative majority on that court. Republicans love that. So the Republicans under Chuck Grassley of Iowa have been trying to eliminate 3 of the seats on that court right now, the 3 seats that are now vacant. They have tried to change the size of the court, shrink it, so there's no more vacancies. So President Obama would not be allowed to appoint any judges to fill those empty seats. Get rid of the empty seats. He can't appoint anybody. The court stays conservative. Problem solved. Like FDR, they tried it, but they did not get away with it. They did, however, this week and last week, filibuster President Obama's 3 nominees to the vacant seats on that court, none of whom they had any particular objection to as people. The first one they filibustered, Patricia Millett there on the left. She was a assistant solicitor general in the George W. Bush administration. What was their objection going to be to her? These nominees got majority votes in Congress, but majority's not enough. Republicans used a filibuster to block them anyway, all of them. And you know what? Democrats just decided they had had enough. After years of fighting about this and pleading and promising and fuming and plotting and threatening over and over and over again that they would do something about this if Republicans kept it up, today, Democrats finally actually did something. You could have knocked me over with a feather. They called for an appeal of a parliamentary ruling on the floor of the Senate. By a majority vote, they overturned the parliamentarians' ruling. It seemed like kind of a quiet exchange, but in doing that, they changed the rules of the United States Senate so Republicans can't just block judges anymore. Judges can be blocked on an up or down vote, on a majority vote, like always, But they cannot be blocked anymore with just a minority of votes. Republicans cannot force that anymore. And I know, as I'm hearing myself saying it, I know that it sounds like it's not that much of a change, but this is a huge freaking deal. This is like 3-inch headlines. This is people who don't even care about politics really ought to care about this. Here's our explainer. This is a huge deal. And Republicans have lost their minds about this now that Democrats finally did it. Orrin Hatch today said Democrats will rue the day. Mitch McConnell said, you will regret this, and you will regret this sooner rather than later. David Vitter, my favorite today, said that this was a dictatorial move. But what this actually was, in terms of how we got here, was just an amazingly reckless miscalculation by the Republican side. Yes, it was the Democrats who pulled the trigger today, but the Democrats had said that they would pull the trigger if this kept happening. Republicans assumed that they could keep pushing the Democrats further and further and further and further on this. They believed that no matter the threats, Democrats would never actually do what was completely within their power to do. So they kept pushing. And Democrats said that filibustering, specifically filibustering these 3 nominees for that D.C. court would be pushing them too far, and they would change the rules. Mitch McConnell did not believe it. He calculated that it would not happen. Thought it was worth doing anyway. Democrats would never follow through on their threat. Look at this, though. If you want to understand the depth of what Mitch McConnell just did here with his calculation on this, just look at this. I'm not sure this has been on TV at all today. This month, as of November 2013, this is the official balance on the federal courts right now in the whole country in terms of full-time federal judges who are already working as judges in this country. Look. As of November 1st this year, there are 390 full-time federal judges in this country who were appointed by Republicans. And there are 390 full-time federal judges in this country who were appointed by Democrats. As of November 1st, as of this month, right now, the federal judiciary is exactly even in terms of Republican or Democratic influence on who is sitting on the bench. President Obama was trying to add 3 more Democratic nominees to that list, and Republicans decided no. It was unprecedented. They had no objections to these judges as people. They could make no case against them other than the fact that they just didn't want the president to have any more nominees. So they blocked those 3 nominations. They said they didn't want anybody in those vacant seats. That was where they drew the line. They said no. Democrats said don't do it. Don't block these 3. That'll be pushing us too far. And the Republicans said nope, we can't take it. You will not be allowed to add those 3 nominees. But you see what that gray pie is there? That on the pie graph there? There's 390 Republican, 390 Democrat. The gray part there, that's how many vacancies there are right now on the federal bench. 93. So think about that for a second. If the Republicans had given in on those 3 judges, or even given in on just 1 or 2 of those 3 judges, I am telling you right now, we would not be where we are today. That would have let the steam out of the Democrats' fury. That would have made the Democrats' rage on this issue calm significantly. If the Republicans had let the balance of the federal courts go from 50-50 to, what would it be, like 50.2% to 49.8%, if they'd just let those 1 or 2 or maybe 3 of those nominees through, the Democrats would still be gnashing their teeth and they'd still be complaining and annoyed, but this would still be a story that was too boring to put on television. Instead, the Republicans took a hard line on those 3 nominees, and now it is Katie bar the door. There is no reason now why President Obama cannot fill all 93 of those judgeships if he wants to. He only needs Democratic votes to do it. What were you thinking, Mitch McConnell? The minute after they changed the rule today in the Senate, one of those 3 nominees for that court in D.C. sailed right through. She got 55 votes, and that's all it takes now. Now she will be a judge. And so will the other 2. And so will 93 more if the president wants it. The federal judiciary, if the president wants to, is going to get more than 90 new Democratic-appointed federal judges because Mitch McConnell didn't apparently think this through. Yeah, the Democrats did it, but it was always in their power to. Why didn't Mitch McConnell think they would? This is a huge change in Washington. And it does not apply just to judges. It also applies to executive branch nominations. So yeah, the Republicans picked this year to filibuster a nominee for Secretary of Defense for the first time in U.S. history, and they did it during a time of war. But they're not going to be able to do things like that anymore either. This is what the Democrats circulated today via press release and on social media to make the case for why they did this. This is judicial nominees and executive branch nominees filibustered under all previous presidents since you've been able to do that in America, in the entire history of the country, half of the times this has happened in our country has been under President Obama. And that ended today. Happy Thursday. This is a huge deal.